Hell hath no fury like an Israel scorned. In the space of just a few weeks, US President Donald Trump has gone from being so popular in Israel he boasted he could be its next prime minister, to a man so hated he could qualify for Israel's next Amalek. The pro-government commentariat in Israel was unsparing in its verdict. The US president had been branded a loser, and his son-in-law Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, the peace envoy, little Jews. Vice President JD Vance has been compared to Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister associated with appeasing Hitler in 1938. Another commentator said Trump had totally surrendered by allowing Iran to enrich uranium. Yet another said the US was weaker than ever before and no one wanted to be its ally. All these are voices close to the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Some are considered his mouthpiece. Collectively, they're performing a textbook handbrake U-turn. They're turning on a president who in his first term recognized the annexation of the occupied Golan Heights, and he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, both things previous presidents had studiously avoided doing. This is also the president who appointed David Friedman, an advocate for the settlers, as US ambassador to Israel. Friedman abandoned all pretense of being neutral in this conflict by opening a tunnel under the Palestinian neighborhood of Silwan in the occupied East Jerusalem with a sledgehammer. Trump stood fully with Israel's genocide in Gaza and continues to do so to this day. Kushner was the brains behind the Board of Peace and a surreal plan to turn Gaza into one of his many Mediterranean beach resorts. But most of all, Trump attacked Iran on Netanyahu's bidding. Never before had a US president been so suggestible, and never before had a prime minister of Israel been so close to the beating heart of a US administration. This is the man they now brand a traitor. But how deep does this rift go? And is Trump destined to be America's last Zionist president? This is not the first time that this has happened. There are many examples of Zionists turning against the superpower of the day on which they depended. When 250,000 Jewish refugees were stranded in displaced persons camps in Europe after the Second World War, and Britain refused to lift the ban on immigration to admit 100,000 Jews to Palestine, the Jewish underground united. Between 1945 and 1948, over 780 British soldiers, police officers and civilians were killed in Palestine, many targeted by the Irgun and the Stern Gang. All this despite the fact that Britain, through the Balfour Declaration, called for a Jewish homeland in 1917 and broke its promise to Arab leaders to set up an Arab state. To this day, Israel refuses to honour the graves of the 91 people who died in the worst Jewish terrorist atrocity, the bombing of the King David Hotel in 1946. Instead, they named a heritage centre after Menachem Begin, the former leader of the Irgun, who approved the bombing and later became Prime Minister. The same gang killed a Swedish diplomat who had saved over 4,000 lives from Nazi concentration camps in the final months of the war. It's a pattern that repeats itself throughout history. Former US President Barack Obama's parting gift to Israel was a military package worth $38 billion over 10 years. It was the largest aid package in US history. But that didn't stop Netanyahu abusing the privilege of a special session of both houses of Congress to insult Obama. Nor did it stop Netanyahu conducting a campaign to sabotage the nuclear agreement with Iran that Obama had created. The former US President Joe Biden, an instinctive liberal Zionist, got the same treatment. For some commentators, all we are seeing is Zionists revealing their true supremacist face. One of Netanyahu's former defense ministers, Moshe Ya'alon, asked, "What is Jewish supremacy? 80 years after the Holocaust, it's Mein Kampf in reverse. The superior race is us." What is driving Israel could just boil down to a country in shock. The shock is being told by America to stop fighting. It's the shock of a settler colony who has lost control of its parent. A similar shock was experienced by the Pieds Noirs in Algeria, who helped bring Charles de Gaulle to power in 1958, only to see the French president pivot to Algerian independence. But whatever's brewing inside Israel is having a truly toxic effect on public opinion on the other side of the Atlantic. It's no exaggeration to say the genocide in Gaza, the failed war on Iran, and Israel's refusal to withdraw from Syria, southern Lebanon and Gaza have killed off a generation of support in the US, in both Republican and Democratic parties. The majority of adults under the age of 50 rate Israel and Netanyahu negatively, Pew Research reveals. Today, 57% of Republicans between the ages of 18 and 49 have an unfavourable opinion of Israel, up from 50% last year. Overall, 60% of US adults have an unfavourable view of Israel, up from 53% last year. 59% have little or no confidence in Netanyahu to do the right thing regarding world affairs, up from 52% last year. The direction of travel is clear. But what is less clear is what this shift means in political terms and when this could trigger a meaningful change of US policy. New York is home to the world's largest diaspora Jewish population. It has just seen 3 incumbent Democrat congressmen unseated and 5 local seats taken by candidates backed by the new mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Soon afterwards, Melet Kiros, a lawyer and PhD student, mounted a stunning upset for the establishment Democrats after she was declared the winner of the Democratic primary in Colorado's 1st congressional district, which includes the state capital, Denver. Kiros ousted Diane DeGetta, a politician who has spent 3 decades on Capitol Hill and received over $1.6 million from the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC. Jewish Voice for Peace Action said that the race proved that AIPAC was a toxic brand in the Democratic Party and that Democrat voters were tired of lawmakers who support or defend genocide. This certainly was a defeat for AIPAC. 3 candidates critical of Israel's genocidal war defeated opponents backed by AIPAC. But did the result represent a meaningful shift or simply a Democrat reincorporation of liberal Zionism without the endorsement of AIPAC? One of the victors was Brad Lander, who won the primary for New York's 10th Congressional District. Lander, who ran for mayor before endorsing Mamdani, previously opposed boycott, divestment and sanctions, BDS, and increased New York City's pension fund investments in Elbit Systems, an Israeli arms manufacturer, during his time as city controller. He describes himself as a liberal Zionist. For experts on relations between Israel and the US, like Daniel Levy, president of USMET, the US Middle East Project, America is only at the start of a long journey on recalibrating its support for Israel. He said it's yet to be seen whether enough of the movement on the Democrat side can be focused on accumulating power, even if they have to hold their noses to achieve a shift in policy. And this happens more slowly than any of them would wish. One of the most significant changes in the US has been the shift which moved Palestine from the political margins into the mainstream. Once dismissed as a niche concern of the left or reduced to questions of Islamism or terrorism, it has become an issue that cuts across the political spectrum. Even sections of the American right have begun to view Israel as a liability rather than an asset. For some conservatives, Israel's conduct, its mass killing of civilians, including children, and its open disregard for international law has made it increasingly difficult to reconcile unconditional support for Israel with America's self-image. Yet, the mainstreaming of Palestine has also come with new boundaries. It's acceptable to discuss the influence of AIPAC because doing so allows Americans to frame the problem as one of undue influence by a powerful lobby. However, for now at least, the limits of this debate are clear. Palestinian resistance, self-determination, or the political aspirations that underpin the Palestinian struggle are issues that remain outside the boundaries of respectable debate. But for Netanyahu, or whoever comes after him, making Israel relevant to the right in America once again will not be a simple task. Stymied over Iran, but allowed to keep territorial gains in Lebanon and Syria, Netanyahu's reaction will be to restart the war in Gaza. But the renewed slaughter in Gaza will increase the sense of revulsion in the US on both sides of the political spectrum. For the moment, there is no easy way out for Israel. The Israeli lobby in the US is not about to roll over and will stage a furious rearguard action. But the more supporting Israel becomes an act of force, and the less it is an article of faith, the bigger the trouble Zionism is in.